Hello, welcome to Bearasaurus Rex Productions. I'm your host Danny, and this here is the very first episode of the Collector's Corner. For those of you who don't know, I am a fan of Godzilla, Kaiju, and just tokusatsu or Japanese special effects films in general. And so I also collect a lot of merchandise. I'm also one of the admins for the Godzilla and Kaiju Collectors group on Facebook. And it just so happens one of their theme week for this week is crawling kaiju. And so I decided to make my very first video about all my figures. And if you can't tell, most of them are Anguirus, although I do have a Baragon figure, and for the fans of Ultra 7, Dinosaur tank. For this series, I think I'm going to go a little bit into the history of some of the figures, just how the figures were made, when they were made, and then how I acquired them. I'm going to play by ear, so let's just see what happens. Alright, the very first figure I got is my Bandai Anguirus. I'll have close-ups of all these figures. This here, I think, was one of the first figures I bought. I bought it off eBay. I know, shame on me. And I've had it for about, 15 years or so. I bought it when I was in college. It's an alright figure. I mean, the head sculpt's alright. The spikes on the shell are a little generic, and they don't really match up with the film figure, but that's fine. I'm still proud I have this figure. I think I paid like 12 bucks or so. This series is, well, I can't remember which series of Bandai figures is, but I'll probably post a tag you should be able to see. And then the next figure I got is the Bandai Godzilla Final Wars figure. With Anguirus, he's only been in 3 series of films. Or, he's only had 3 different costume variations. He had his 55 variation, then he had the later Showa variation from 1968 on, and then of course he had the Godzilla Final Wars version. And all his variations, I'm a fan of. Like, there's never been a version that's shown up on film that I'm like, no, this is not Anguirus, or this is awful. Got pretty close with the GMK concept. And that was a little bit poodly for me. But that said, for my favorite kaiju, he's turned out pretty well. And the Bandai Anguirus is a pretty decent figure. I mean, it's affordable. It's not entirely movie accurate, but it gets the job done. And there's, I think, 2 or 3 other variants of this that I would like to eventually pick up. The next on my list is the Plushy Anguirus. This here, I like it just because I like plush figures in general. I have a Rodan and a Hedera upstairs. I don't know. They're fun figures. They stand out in the collection, and whenever I invite people over and they look at my stuff, they always point to this figure. And this is one of the ones they always talk about. They think it's very cute. I want to say I paid like 20 or 30 bucks for it. Again, I got this one off eBay about maybe 10 years ago. Maybe 8 years. I don't remember exactly. The face is a little derpy, but that said, it's a good figure. If you're a fan of like plushies, or if you don't want to get something for your kid, it's a figure I would definitely recommend. It's one of my favorites in my collection. And next up, I'm going to do my Gashapon HD figure. This here, unlike these other ones, is of the 1955 Anguirus. And for being such a small figure, it is super high detailed. I normally keep this on my office desk upstairs, and I don't know. It's a figure I definitely recommend. It's if you like the 1955 Anguirus, it's fairly movie accurate. It's maybe about 5 or 6 inches in length, and it's about 2 inches tall. I think it has a nice bluish gray color scheme. I think it's going for the whole black and white look from Godzilla Raids Again, and it's just a cool looking figure. He's up on he's on his two-legged stance, and it really stands out. And it's a figure I'm glad to have in my collection. Okay, next up in the lineup, I'm going to change up a little bit and go with Baragon. Specifically the GMK variant. And this figure here is from Bandai. And actually, it's very well detailed for a Bandai. And it's a cool figure. It's one I think every collection should have. For GMK, this was actually my favorite kaiju in GMK. And it's of note that this is one of the few kaiju to ever be played by a female suit actor. And she did a fantastic job. Like, she really did a good job of making Baragon come off as the underdog. And if you haven't seen GMK, it's worth it simply for the Godzilla versus Baragon fight. It's one of the best fights in like the past 20 years or so. And after that, we'll cover Dinosaur Tank. This here is a fairly small figure. It's maybe about 6 inches in length. Yeah, about 6 inches in length. And this figure is from Bandai. And if you haven't seen Ultraman, or not Ultraman, Ultra 7, I highly recommend. Ultra 7 is one of my favorite of the Ultra series. And one of the reasons why is because he, I think, has some of the craziest kaiju. And of the kaiju he fights, Dinosaur Tank is probably my favorite just because he's so far out there as a concept. He's a dinosaur glued to the top of a tank. I mean, I guess when you see him, he looks pathetic. Like, there's no reason he should put up a fight against Ultraman or Ultra 7, but he does, and the fight is glorious. Like, it's one of my favorite Ultra fights ever, just because of how hokey it is. And Dinosaur Tank, he's part of the reason for that, and I love him to death. I actually got him at G-Fest, this past G-Fest. He was one of the figures I've been looking for. Alright, I'm going to hop back to Anguirus and talk about this figure here. This here is the Yamakatsu Anguirus. It came out in 1983, and the Yamakatsu figures are known for being the first series of figures that are relatively film accurate. And they were also released in advance of the 1984 Godzilla film. This here was one of my holy grail figures. I bought it this past year, also at G-Fest. Alright, the next two figures I bought from Michael Cherkowski off Vampire Robots. He's a pretty top-notch dealer. I get most of my X Plus stuff from him. And I'm going to start off with the first figure I got from him, which is the 30 centimeter X Plus 1968 Anguirus. This is one of the most beautiful figures in my collection. It's maybe about 1.5 feet long. It's definitely the most detailed figure. Like, it's all the spikes, you can see all the little grooves on the spikes, the individual scales. And let's see, no, it doesn't have the neck holes for the actor to see out of, which I've seen. I think a couple of the X Plus figures do have that. The eyes, they really pop. They're very glossy compared to the matte finish of the rest of the figure, so they stand out. And the detail on the teeth. There's even detail on the teeth, which is pretty impressive. You know, with this here, they definitely make the suit actor, how he crawled around on his knees. So they stick to that, unlike, well, I don't know, the other figures, the Yamakatsu and the Bandai, they do that, but I wouldn't say they're as screen accurate as this one, as far as the position of the suit actor. The tail is also beautiful. I honestly never knew Anguirus had a spike on the tip of his tail till I saw this figure. So, you can learn stuff collecting figures about the movie characters and the suits. Alright. And then the final figure. Let's see. I'm trying to remember who. Yeah, this here is the Mater-san figure. This here is based off a 1955 Anguirus. It's definitely the most colorful figure I have. And I actually got this as a set from Vampire Robots with the 1955 Godzilla as well. And they go together phenomenal. I've seen pictures of the 1955 Mater-san figure, Godzilla figure, and I wasn't really impressed until I decided to just go ahead and buy the figure to have a matching set. And when you have it in person, it is much more satisfying to own than it is to just see pictures off the internet. I'll do a review about that some other time, though. This here has a lot of browns and silvers and metallic teal, I'd say. I'm not really good at naming colors, but that looks, I would say, tealish, a metallic teal. It's definitely a stylized figure, if you're a fan of that. And I love my stylized figures because they always stand out. And they're usually one of the things, my Marmits, my Mater-sans, and all the other figures I have that are stylized, those are usually the ones that people comment about the most. You know, they say they're cute, they're adorable, they look cool, and so I'm a fan of them as far as having figures that stand out in your collection. One of my critiques of this figure, though, is I can't, like, when you get the feet, so they're level, so let me see if I can get this explained. When you're trying to get the figure to sit on 4 legs, it looks awkward. His legs, it's like he's trying to frog hop. But then if you put him back, he's walking on his toes, and that just doesn't look right at all. Or if you try to go like this figure and have him on his hind legs, it looks like he's trying to do a squat. So it's a little awkward to have him positioned so he looks nice in your collection. So that's one of the downsides. But that said, overall, probably my 3 favorite figures would have to be definitely the X Plus, the Mater-san, and the Yamakatsu. Just because, I mean, with the Yamakatsu you have a little bit of history. With the X Plus you have the movie accurate representation of the '68 suit. And then with the Mater-san, it's just a beautiful stylized figure. So that said, I've pretty much covered everything I have for today. I hope you enjoyed, and I will definitely be posting more figure reviews in the future. Definitely more intensive figure reviews. This here was just kind of a very brief summary of everything that I have. If you like this video, be sure to like and or subscribe, and thank you for watching.